The road to the Whispering Willow was not one found on any common map, nor was it paved with anything but ancient intention and the soft, moss-kissed earth of a forest primeval. Lyra had followed whispers and faint, shimmering trails of something like forgotten starlight for 3 days, leaving behind the relentless thrum of the city, the demanding glare of screens, and the ceaseless clamor of expectations. Her shoulders, usually hunched with the weight of her responsibilities, had begun to loosen with each passing mile, each deeper breath of air scented with pine and damp earth. She was a cartographer of data, a navigator of concrete jungles, and the wilderness was a foreign country to her yet, strangely, it felt more like home than any place she'd ever inhabited. The late afternoon sun, diffused through a canopy of ancient oaks and towering silver birches, dappled the path in shifting gold and emerald. Sounds were muted here, absorbed by the thick carpet of fallen leaves and the hushed conversations of unseen forest dwellers. Lyra's boots, unaccustomed to such terrain, made soft, rhythmic thuds, a soothing counterpoint to the distant, liquid notes of an unknown bird. She felt the subtle shift in the air, a cool, sweet currents that hinted at the proximity of water, or perhaps something more ethereal. It was a sensation that prickled her skin in the most delightful way, like the memory of a half-forgotten dream. Just as the last sliver of sunlight threatened to dip below the horizon, painting the western sky in hues of bruised plum and smoldering orange, she saw it. Nestled within a clearing, almost as if the forest had parted just for its embrace, stood the Whispering Willow. It wasn't grand or imposing, but possessed a quiet, unassuming majesty. The tavern was built of dark, rough-hewn timber, its roof a patchwork quilt of thick, weather-beaten thatch that dipped and swooped like the wings of a slumbering dragon. Vines, heavy with tiny luminous flowers that pulsed with a faint, internal light, clung to its walls, tracing intricate patterns around deep-set, leaded glass windows. Smoke, fragrant with oak and something else, something sweet and herbal, curled lazily from a squat stone chimney. A sign, hand-carved from a single piece of willow wood, hung crookedly above the heavy oak door. Its letters, picked out in what looked like phosphorescent moss, glowed faintly. The Whispering Willow Estate, time immemorial. Below it, in smaller, almost playful script, was a line that made Lyra smile despite her exhaustion. Mind the Fae and the shifting stairs. A wave of warmth, both literal and metaphorical, washed over her as she approached. Laughter, low and rumbling, high and tinkling, drifted from within, accompanied by the clinking of glasses and the soft murmur of conversation. It wasn't the raucous clamor of a city pub, but a harmonious symphony of conviviality, like a chorus of crickets and gentle bells. Her hand, trembling slightly with a mixture of anticipation and fatigue, reached for the polished iron handle, shaped like a tightly curled fern frond. It felt cool beneath her fingers, smooth and inviting. Stepping inside was like walking into a painting, a vivid canvas woven from light and shadow, scent and sound. The air was thick with the comforting aroma of roasted meats, simmering stews, aged wood, and a curious undertone of something akin to dew-kissed moss and spiced honey. A grand, roaring fireplace, built of ancient, soot-stained stones, dominated one wall, casting a flickering, golden glow across the room. Its warmth enveloped Lyra instantly, chasing away the chill of the evening. The common room was a delightful, chaotic jumble of mismatched wooden tables and chairs, worn smooth by countless hands and countless tales. Tapestries depicting mythical beasts and verdant forests adorned the walls, their threads shimmering as if alive. Shelf upon shelf of dusty, leather-bound books lined another wall, alongside an array of curious artifacts. A polished dragon scale, a cluster of what looked like petrified lightning, a glass orb swirling with miniature galaxies. A woman emerged from behind the bar, her smile as warm and inviting as the hearth fire. She was tall, with a strong, comforting presence, her silver-streaked hair woven into a thick, practical braid that reached her waist. Her eyes, the color of moss agate, held an ancient kindness and a knowing sparkle. She wore a simple, linen dress, smudged with flour and a faint trace of shimmering dust. "Welcome, dear traveler," she said, her voice a low, melodious hum, like a cello string plucked gently. "You look as though you've walked a very long way indeed. I am Alara, keeper of this humble, if slightly enchanted, establishment. And you are?" "Lyra," she managed, her voice a little hoarse from disuse. "Lyra Thorne. I heard about this place. Needed a quiet retreat." Alara chuckled, a soft, rumbling sound. "Quiet, my dear, is a relative term here. Enchanted, yes. Peaceful, mostly. Never truly quiet. Not with the Willow's particular temperament." She gestured around the room. Lyra's gaze swept across the patrons, and her breath caught. It wasn't just humans. At a corner table, a gnome with an impressively bushy beard meticulously polished a collection of polished pebbles, humming tunelessly. Nearby, two diminutive figures with iridescent wings, undoubtedly pixies, giggled as they deftly levitated a tray of empty tankards back towards the bar. A creature with long, slender limbs and skin like bark, a dryad perhaps, sat by the fireplace, conversing quietly with a wizened old man whose face was etched with 1,000 laugh lines. Even a hulking, green-skinned goblin, surprisingly well-dressed in a velvet waistcoat, sat hunched over a board game, muttering strategy to himself. Alara noticed Lyra's widened eyes. "Oh, don't worry. They're all quite harmless. Mostly. And well-behaved, usually." She winked. "Come, let's get you settled. I imagine you'd appreciate a warm meal and a soft bed more than philosophical discourse on the nature of reality right now." Lyra nodded gratefully, a small, genuine smile finally gracing her lips. Alara led her through a door behind the bar, down a short, winding hallway that seemed to breathe with the scent of lavender and old paper. The walls here were lined with framed botanical prints, each flower shimmering faintly as if imbued with its own light. "We have but a few rooms," Alara explained, her voice echoing softly in the quiet corridor. "Each has its own quirks, but I've found that the Willow tends to assign guests the room that suits them best, whether they know it or not." She stopped before a door of pale, unvarnished wood, adorned with a delicate carving of intertwining branches. "This one, I believe, will suit you perfectly." The room was small but exquisitely cozy. A four-poster bed, draped with thick, quilted blankets in shades of forest green and deep plum, dominated the space. A small wooden desk stood by the window, which overlooked a small, private garden filled with moon-petal flowers that glowed with a gentle, internal luminescence. The air in the room was infused with a faint, sweet scent, like spring rain on new leaves. As Lyra set down her satchel on the polished wooden floor, she noticed a peculiar phenomenon. A single, unbound page from a book lay on the bedside table. As she watched, a delicate ink drawing of a tiny, winged creature seemed to flutter its wings, almost imperceptibly, before settling back into stillness. Lyra blinked, then rubbed her eyes. Fatigue, she told herself. Just fatigue playing tricks. "Dinner will be ready in an hour, Lyra," Alara said, her voice pulling Lyra from her momentary reverie. "Take your time. Unwind. And don't be alarmed if the teapot hums a little, or if your shoes decide to swap places. It's just the Willow saying hello." With another warm smile, Alara left, closing the door softly behind her. Lyra stood for a moment in the silence, letting the unique atmosphere of the room wash over her. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of soft creaks and groans of ancient wood, the gentle rustle of leaves outside, and a faint, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to emanate from the very walls. She walked to the window, gazing out at the moon-petal garden. As she watched, one of the flowers pulsed brighter, then released a tiny, shimmering orb of light that floated lazily into the air before dissolving into nothingness. Lyra frowned, a flicker of her old skepticism attempting to reassert itself. But it felt harmless, beautiful even. She began to unpack, placing her few belongings on the dresser. As she reached for her travel-worn book, a heavy tome on ancient folklore, it seemed to leap into her hand with an unexpected lightness. and when she placed her toothbrush on the ceramic holder, it shimmered briefly, turning a soft, pearlescent blue before reverting to its original white. Lyra stared at it, a slow, incredulous smile spreading across her face. This wasn't fatigue. This was something else entirely. She changed into comfortable clothes, still marveling at the faint, sweet scent that clung to the air in her room. When she emerged, refreshed and strangely energized, the common room had grown even livelier. The low hum of conversations had deepened, and a musician, a lean figure with eyes the color of twilight, sat on a stool by the hearth, coaxing mournful, haunting melodies from a lute carved from dark, gleaming wood. Elara saw her and waved her over to a small, empty table near the window. Just in time. We're serving the Willow's famous hearty hearth stew tonight. And for you, Lyra, a mug of our berry brew. It's quite unique. The stew was thick and savory, brimming with root vegetables and tender cuts of venison, perfectly spiced. But it was the berry brew that truly surprised her. It arrived steaming in a ceramic mug, its surface swirling with iridescent colors. When Lyra took a sip, it tasted first of tart wild berries, then mellowed into the sweetness of honey, and finally left a lingering aftertaste of something cool and minty. As she watched, the colors in the mug shifted, swirling from deep violet to a brilliant emerald. It changes with your mood, a soft voice beside her said. Lyra turned to see a small, delicately built woman with long, moss-green hair and eyes like polished amber. She had slender, pointed ears that peeked from beneath her hair. Or sometimes with the Willow's mood. Tonight, it seems quite content. She smiled, a shy, ethereal gesture. I am Ardelia, a dryad of these ancient woods. Welcome to the Willow, Lyra. Thank you, Ardelia, Lyra replied, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. This was unlike anywhere she had ever been. There was an open acceptance here, a quiet understanding that transcended her previous world's rigid categories. As the evening deepened, the magical mischief became more pronounced, yet remained utterly benign. A cluster of glowing fireflies, seemingly conjured from thin air, danced above the gnome's beard, causing him to grumble good-naturedly as he tried to swat them away. A tankard of ale, left unattended on the bar, suddenly foamed into a cascade of tiny, sparkling bubbles that popped with soft, bell-like sounds. The lute player's instrument, at one point, seemed to play a whimsical, entirely new tune on its own for a few bars, causing him to raise an eyebrow in amused surprise before regaining control. Lyra found herself chuckling freely, a sound that felt foreign but welcome on her own lips. The tension that had coiled in her shoulders for so long had begun to unwind, replaced by a light, effervescent joy. She watched the pixie couple engage in a playful duel with enchanted sugar cubes, which zipped and spun through the air like tiny, sugary bullets. She listened to the dryad, Ardelia, recounting tales of the forest's oldest trees, their voices like whispers on the wind. Later, as the evening began to wind down and patrons drifted towards their rooms, or simply melted back into the forest shadows, Lyra found herself lingering by the hearth, nursing the last sips of her ever-changing berry brew. Elara, wiping down the bar with a methodical ease, glanced at her. "So, Lyra Thorne," she said, her voice soft in the quieting room. "What do you make of the Willow's temperament now?" Lyra smiled, looking into the dancing flames. "It's incredible, and a little overwhelming in the best possible way. I've never seen anything like it. Are things always this active?" Elara leaned against the bar, her gaze distant, fixed on the glowing embers. "The Willow has always been thus. It sits on a convergence of powerful ley lines, ancient magical currents that flow through the earth. Sometimes, these currents hum louder, and the magic becomes more playful, more pronounced. It reflects the life within its walls, the joy, the warmth, the occasional grumble. It's not a curse, not really. More of a blessing, albeit one that requires a certain flexibility of mind." She paused, then looked directly at Lyra. "Some come here seeking quiet, and they find it, just not in the way they expect. They find the quiet of the soul amidst the gentle chaos. It's a place where the logical mind learns to rest and the heart remembers how to dance. Lyra thought about her life before, the relentless pursuit of order, of quantifiable data, of predictable outcomes. Here, every moment was a soft, unpredictable marvel. And the flowers outside my window, she murmured. The ones that glow? Moon petals, Elara confirmed. They thrive on starlight and dreams, and they often gift little motes of light-condensed dreams. Some say to those who are open to them. Perhaps the willow senses you are open, Lyra. A profound sense of peace settled over Lyra. It wasn't the absence of activity, but the absence of stress. The magic here wasn't demanding or dangerous. It was playful, whimsical, a constant reminder of wonder. She felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from her spirit. Her skepticism had evaporated, replaced by a simple, open curiosity. I think, Lyra said, her voice soft with contentment. I think I might like to stay for a while, Elara, if you'll have me. Alara's smile was radiant. The willow always has room for those who belong. Sleep well, Lyra Thorne. And don't be surprised if your dreams are a little brighter tonight. As Lyra climbed the creaking stairs to her room, she noticed that the handrail seemed to shimmer faintly under her touch, and a faint, sweet melody, like distant wind chimes, followed her. She reached her door, and just as she turned the handle, a tiny, luminescent butterfly, no bigger than her thumb, fluttered from beneath the doorframe, danced in the air for a moment, and then vanished. Lyra smiled, a genuine, joyful smile that reached her eyes. She stepped inside, the soft glow of the moon petals outside her window casting gentle shadows across her bed. The air still carried that faint, sweet scent, and she felt a deep, abiding comfort she hadn't known was possible. She curled up beneath the warm quilts, listening to the soft, rhythmic creaks of the ancient building and the distant, gentle hum of the willow's magic. Sleep, when it came, was profound and dream-filled, filled with iridescent butterflies and melodies played by unseen hands. The morning at the Whispering Willow dawned not with the jarring intrusion of an alarm, but with the soft, persistent tickle of sunlight filtered through the dew-kissed leaves outside Lyra's window. She stretched, her muscles protesting pleasantly from the previous day's journey, but her mind felt remarkably clear, unburdened by the usual morning anxieties. A soft, humming sound, like a contented bee, seemed to emanate from the very wooden panels of her room. She blinked, and a small, luminous motes of dust danced in the sunbeam, swirling and reforming into fleeting shapes: a tiny tree, a laughing face, then dissolving back into sparkling motes. Lyra smiled, a newfound ease settling into her spirit. She was no longer questioning what she saw. She was simply observing, accepting. After a refreshing wash, where the water from the tap briefly swirled with shimmering gold before becoming perfectly clear, Lyra descended to the common room. The scent of freshly baked bread, honey, and brewing tea filled the air, mingling with the ever-present undertone of ancient wood and something subtly magical. The large common room, bathed in the soft morning light, looked even more inviting than it had the night before. Elara was already behind the bar, meticulously arranging plates of warm pastries and sliced fruit. "Good morning, Lyra. Slept well, I trust?" she greeted, her voice a melodious chime. "Better than I have in years, Elara," Lyra admitted genuinely. It was incredibly peaceful. She glanced at a mischievous-looking marmalade cat sitting on a stool at the bar, seemingly engrossed in a newspaper. The cat looked up, met her gaze with startlingly intelligent green eyes, and then, to Lyra's absolute delight, winked. Elara chuckled. "Ah, yes, Barnaby, our resident feline critic. He generally approves of new guests if they're polite. Just don't try to sneak him an extra sardine. He'll tell Elara, and you'll get a lecture on proper nutrition." Lyra felt a bubbling laugh escape her lips. A talking, winking cat discussing diet with the tavern keeper. Her city-honed logic was utterly useless here, and she found it wonderfully liberating. She settled at a small table near the window, where the morning sun spilled in, highlighting the intricate dust motes dancing in the air. A plate of golden, flaky pastries appeared before her as if by magic, accompanied by a steaming mug of tea. The tea this morning was a vibrant green, smelling of jasmine and something invigorating, like a gentle forest breeze. As she took a sip, she felt a surge of energy, not the jittery caffeine kind, but a calm, sustaining vitality. The breakfast crowd was a mixed bag, as Alara had implied. The grumpy gnome from the previous night, whose name Lyra learned was Grumblefoot, was meticulously arranging his breakfast items into a symmetrical pattern on his plate. The two pixies from last night were flitting around a bowl of berries, occasionally snatching one and performing aerial acrobatics before popping it into their mouths. A group of 3 stout, rosy-cheeked gnomes were engaged in a lively debate about the structural integrity of a new bridge they were building near the Whisper Stream, their voices a continuous stream of rolling R's and hearty guffaws. Lyra observed it all, feeling a quiet contentment bloom within her. She was no longer an outsider looking in. She was simply there, part of the tapestry. Even as she ate, the subtle magic continued. A sugar cube from the bowl on her table momentarily floated into her tea, stirring itself perfectly before dissolving. The jam pot pulsed with a faint, warm light, making the strawberry preserves shimmer enticingly. Lyra simply smiled, leaning into the whimsicality of it all. After breakfast, Lyra, feeling an unusual urge to contribute, approached Alara. "Is there anything I can help with, Alara? To earn my keep, perhaps?" Alara paused, considering her with a thoughtful gaze. "That's very kind of you, Lyra. The willow always appreciates a helping hand. I could use some assistance with the herb garden out back. Some of the rarer spell weeds need careful tending, and sometimes they decide to wander off on their own." "Wander off," Lyra repeated, a smile playing on her lips. "Indeed," Alara said with a twinkle in her eye. "Especially the giggle leaf. It has a mischievous tendency to bury itself deep within the soil if it's feeling ignored. And the dream thistle, well, it prefers to grow only where happy thoughts have recently settled." Armed with a small trowel and a woven basket, Lyra found herself in a sun-drenched garden behind the tavern. It was less a cultivated plot and more a riotous celebration of nature, bursting with plants of every conceivable color and form. Flowers bloomed in impossible shades, some emitting soft musical notes, others gently swaying even in the still air. The air here was thick with the scent of thyme, lavender, and something else, a sweet, earthy perfume that hummed with life. She spent the next few hours immersed in the simple, satisfying work. As she gently loosened the soil around a patch of shimmering starlight rose, she felt a soft tickle on her ear. A tiny sprite, no bigger than her thumb, with translucent, dragonfly-like wings, zipped past, leaving a trail of shimmering dust. "Thank you for being so gentle," a voice, like the tinkling of tiny bells, whispered in her ear. Lyra chuckled, feeling the warmth of the sun on her back and the soft, cool earth beneath her gloved hands. She found the giggle leaf, its leaves trembling with suppressed laughter, surprisingly deep in the soil, requiring a gentle coaxing. As she carefully unearthed it, a cascade of soft, almost inaudible giggles seemed to bubble up from the plant itself. The dream thistle, on the other hand, thrived beautifully near an old stone bench, where Lyra imagined many happy memories had been shared. Its delicate, feathery blossoms glowed with a soft, internal light. The day passed in a series of these delightful, unexpected moments. Lyra helped Alara fold laundry, only to find the linen playfully reshaping themselves into animal forms before settling back into neat piles. She attempted to sweep the common room, but the dust bunnies seemed to develop a mind of their own, forming small, fluffy convoys that would dart away from her broom, only to reform in another corner. Eventually, she simply left them to their whimsical parade, realizing that the willow's particular brand of tidiness was not to be dictated by human brooms. During the afternoon, a traveling merchant, a gruff but kindly dwarf named Borin, arrived, his cart laden with various wares. He set up his goods near the fireplace, and the common room became a bustling marketplace. Lyra watched, fascinated, as Boren unwrapped bolts of fabric that shimmered with changing colors, jars of preserves that glowed faintly, and intricately carved wooden toys that seemed to move on their own. "Careful with that one, Boren," Elara called out, pointing to a small, wooden bird that had suddenly taken flight from its perch and was circling the dwarf's head. "It's got a particularly strong wanderlust today." Boren merely grumbled good-naturedly. Tell me about it. Bought it from a rather flighty goblin. Said it'd bring good fortune, but it mainly just brings headaches." He skillfully snagged the bird out of the air, which promptly settled on his shoulder and began to sing a tiny, surprisingly robust song. Lyra found herself drawn into a conversation with Ardelia, the dryad, who was admiring a necklace made of polished river stones. "These stones carry the wisdom of the water," Ardelia murmured, her fingers tracing the smooth surface. "They speak of currents and depths of quiet patience." Lyra felt a profound sense of connection with these beings, with this place. The city had drained her, leaving her feeling brittle and hollow. Here, she felt herself refilling, her spirit expanding to encompass the wonder around her. The logical part of her brain, which had once demanded explanations and proofs, had quieted, allowing a more intuitive, accepting part of her to flourish. As evening approached, the common room filled again, even more boisterously than the night before. Tonight was story night at the Willow, a tradition that had seemingly existed for centuries. The hearth fire burned higher, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to twist and writhe with the energy of anticipation. Elara dimmed the enchanted lanterns, casting the room in a warm, intimate glow. She then clapped her hands, and the various conversations slowly died down. "Welcome, friends, to another story night," she announced, her voice resonating with ancient echoes. "Tonight, the Willow feels a tale of courage. Who will begin?" A grizzled old man, a human Lyra hadn't seen before, rose, his eyes twinkling. He began a tale of a valiant knight and a grumpy dragon who just wanted to be left alone to tend his prize-winning dahlias. As he spoke, the very air around them seemed to respond. When he described the dragon's roar, a low, rumbling vibration went through the floor. When he spoke of the knight's shining armor, a faint, metallic shimmer seemed to emanate from the very walls. Then Ardelia took her turn, her voice a soft, lilting melody, telling of the ancient woods, of trees that communicated through roots and wind, of the spirits of the forest. As she spoke, tiny, phosphorescent motes of light floated through the air, swirling like miniature galaxies, and the scent of damp earth and blooming night jasmine filled the room. Finally, it was a hobgoblin's turn, a surprisingly eloquent fellow with a booming voice and a love for exaggerated gestures. He told a thrilling and clearly embellished tale of a stolen magical artifact and a daring rescue, during which several chairs in the room momentarily levitated a few inches off the floor, and a pitcher of water on a nearby table bubbled vigorously as if boiling. The crowd roared with laughter and applause. Lyra found herself utterly captivated, lost in the vibrant tapestry of stories and the palpable magic that woven itself through every word. She felt a connection to something ancient, something deeply rooted in the heart of the world. It was a feeling of belonging, of being exactly where she was meant to be. Later, as the story night drew to a close and the common room began to empty, Lyra remained, sitting quietly by the dying embers of the fire. Elara approached, a warm, knowing smile on her face. "A good night, wasn't it?" she mused, stoking the embers gently. "More than good," Lyra replied, her voice filled with a quiet awe. "It was. Profound. I've never felt so alive, so connected to anything." She paused, then looked at Elara. "This place is truly remarkable. The curse, or rather the magic. It feels like it's part of the very fabric of existence here." "It is," Elara agreed. "The Willow breathes magic. It responds to kindness, to joy, to the honest heart. It's a living entity, in its own way, nurturing those who enter its embrace. Many come here weary, just as you did, seeking a respite from the world's harshness. And the willow, in its own playful way, reminds them of the wonder they'd forgotten. Lyra thought about her old life, the endless spreadsheets, the demanding deadlines, the concrete and steel that had formed her world. She had believed that purpose came from productivity, that success was measured in achievement. But here, she was learning that true richness lay in presence, in observation, in the quiet joy of being. The magic wasn't about grand gestures or heroic feats. It was in the hum of a teapot, the winking of a cat, the gentle dance of dust motes in a sunbeam. It was in the laughter of pixies and the ancient wisdom of a dryad. "I think," Lyra said slowly, her gaze fixed on the glowing embers, "I think I want to stay for a while longer. Much longer if you'd have me. Maybe I could help more, learn more about the garden, about the willow's rhythms." Alara's smile was the most beautiful thing Lyra had seen. "The willow is always open to those who listen to its whispers, Lyra. And I believe you are truly beginning to hear them." She placed a gentle hand on Lyra's shoulder. "This place has a way of helping people remember who they truly are, beneath all the layers the world has put upon them. Welcome home, Lyra Thorne." As Lyra finally ascended the stairs to her room, the hallway seemed to hum with a gentle, contented warmth. Her door, when she reached it, emitted a faint, sweet scent, like freshly baked bread mixed with night-blooming jasmine. Inside, the moon petals outside her window pulsed with a vibrant, silvery light, and on her pillow, she found a single, perfectly formed feather, iridescent and shimmering with all the colors of the dawn. It was a gift from the willow, a small token of acceptance. She lay in bed, surrounded by the soft, ambient sounds of the ancient tavern, the faint creak of timbers, the distant murmur of the enchanted stream, the almost imperceptible hum of the willow's deep, benevolent magic. The air was soft, cool, and carried the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke and growing things. Lyra closed her eyes, a profound sense of peace settling over her. Her breathing slowed, deepened, each breath a gentle anchor in the present moment. The worries of her old life seemed to dissolve like morning mist, replaced by a quiet, vibrant wonder. Here, in the embrace of the whispering willow, she had found more than just a quiet retreat. She had found a sanctuary for her soul, a place where magic was not just a story, but the very breath of life itself. And as the soft, ethereal light from the moon petals outside her window cast gentle shadows across her room, Lyra drifted into a sleep as deep and enchanting as the tavern itself, filled with dreams of laughter, shimmering dust, and the gentle, enduring magic of the whispering willow. The quiet hum of the building lulled her deeper, deeper, into a slumber woven with moonlight and starlight, a testament to a world where magic was as natural as breathing.